So this video is about how white racism destroyed white America. Everybody's pissed at that title, right? I hope so. But of course, that's clickbait, isn't it? The topic's on point. What I typed is on point, but it was made specifically to get you to take a look. So, here's how it is. White racism. That's right, we have to place it specifically on white people, don't we? There's a reason for that. That's how it all started. We had a bunch of white Europeans who had the opinion that they were better than everybody else because they were white. And they did a lot of horrible things to people because of it, especially here in Americas. Especially here in the Americas. And it never stopped. The problem is the American people choose to be as selectively ignorant as possible. If it doesn't fit their idea of what their white culture is, they just pretend it didn't happen, or pretend that whoever it was done to had it coming for some reason or another because they're not white. And we also get to see the cultural repercussions of this racism. Let's start off with the Constitution. You know, our forefathers were separated into two separate camps. And we're going to get to specifically racism against black people here shortly. But for now, we need to start off with the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War, Declaration of Independence, and all of that shit. You know, it's supposed to establish that all men are created equally, right? Well, it needs to be changed to all people. The Lord talking about all of this self-evident stuff, well, it's not the Lord who wrote those. It was human beings who wrote that. Many of which didn't believe that certain things should be in there, such as the continuation of slavery. And so those in the South who were slave owners, they agreed, first of all, that they weren't going to have slavery in the North, and also that the South would eventually abolish their slavery. And not before long, because the South, unlike the North, the South has a lot of abundant resources that are easy to access. And the North, yeah, they have a bunch of industry, but they also have to dig deep for that stuff. A lot tougher than in the South. That also depends on where in the South you're at. Oh, nice. Found me some dimes. Now, when we look at the cultural racism of that, the idea that, well, we were still going to have slavery despite the fact that we're all supposed to be equals, right? Black folks fought on both sides of that conflict. Up to 30% of those who fought on board British ships and up to 70% of those who fought on American ships, both in the Revolutionary War as well as the War of 1812, 70% of American sailors were black. Many of them descendants of former slaves, but not slaves themselves ever in their lifetimes. The Civil War, well, it was fought over one right, the right to own human beings. 1% of Southerners owned slaves. 1%. But every person in the South was forced into battle. Forced. That's right, there was barely a man between 14 and 60. Because most of them were off to war and many of them already dead. The South had to conscript pretty much everybody in that area, force them into the military. That's part of the reason many Southerners joined the North. They'd never owned a slave, and here they were being told that they have to go kill people, being told that under penalty of death, they will either go kill Northerners over slaves that aren't theirs for a bunch of rich people who are going to sit on their horses or at their plantations, do whatever they want. We've gone into how the 13th Amendment, as soon as the war was ended, the 13th Amendment was enacted, and it stated that, well, you guys want to pretend the 13th Amendment ended slavery. It didn't. It made slavery legal in every single state in the Union. Anybody who is convicted of a crime may be used as slave labor, according to the 13th Amendment. So you've got 4 million Southern slaves. Now they're all homeless. The plantation owners still own the property. These black people who have just been freed don't own shit. They're all homeless. You enact anti-homeless laws. Well, those anti-homeless laws, these Jim Crow laws, that is what they are. They're anti-homeless laws. They're not anti-black laws. Now you get to see the drinking fountains where it says coloreds only and whites only, right? Well, that's some Jim Crow too, and that's not anti-homeless. That is specifically anti-racist. Well, that's because people fought for the rights of black folks. Who fights for the rights of the homeless? We're not even allowed to fight for our own rights. Ronald Reagan dumps a whole bunch of crazy people out on the streets in the 1980s. Here we are in 2022. And of course, you guys pretend everybody on the streets must be crazy because of the 80s. The crazy 80s, right? Fucking nuttier than goddamn squirrel turds, if you ask me. But you didn't, did you? Well, try to unhear that. Good luck. Fighting a tough battle out here, and we have no rights. The homeless, those Jim Crow laws, the very first Jim Crow laws enacted after the Civil War were specifically meant to target black people because every black person in the South was all of a sudden homeless. So the anti-homeless laws, it's like, oh, well, we're not being racist. They're breaking the law. And that also goes for white homeless people. That also goes for Hispanic homeless people. Anybody who's broke now can be targeted and forced into slavery. And that gives you all sorts of incentive for having real shitty laws, like it's illegal to use a blanket so you don't freeze to death in Boulder, Colorado at night. Stupid. So then, of course, this has all got to do with wars, doesn't it? Black folks have fought in every single war that America has had. And we have all these claims of how black folks were not allowed this, they weren't allowed that. You know what? During World War I, we made an exception, didn't we? They were only allowed to be cooks in our army. But how many American pilots, African American pilots, went over and fought for France or England? England was not as receptive, but France certainly was. And even them cooks in the rear echelon, they ended up firing them guns too and fighting for their own lives against the Hessians or the Hun. You don't understand your history or know the impact. You don't read the laws. You don't read the Constitution. You don't know what your rights even are. The British people and the Australian people know our Constitution better than we do. They understand the importance and the influence. And they also understand that when it comes to the mantle of democracy, America is not the mantle. The things that we're doing, the things that we're working on as human beings, how much of it is stifled by that 1%? The chain gangs that were created that, well, they're still used primarily for black folks. Homeless black folks in specific. Also homeless white folks. We wanted to make sure that these folks weren't stuck in prison camps, basically, forced labor camps. So we fought a war, a civil war, to free these folks from their prison camps. And after the war, we made government-run prison camps, and we called them chain gangs. Adolf Hitler, Fritz Sauckel, Heinrich Himmler, they all used the American chain gangs as their inspiration for concentration camps like Dachau and Auschwitz, or Auschwitz. Those were concentration camps, and we've got the forced labor camps. Forced labor, that's called slavery. So, who were the first people rounded up after the Civil War to be forced into slavery? Was it actually black folks? In that particular instance, yes, but black folks and homeless and the mentally disabled. Those were the first. That's right. Same thing with the forced labor camps like Gusen II and Bergkristall in World War II. These are horrible places. Now, before you want to go, oh, you can't compare us with Nazi Germany, I want you to keep in mind that there are still black people in southern fields picking cotton to this day because of the 13th Amendment, which was supposed to free them. There are black people to this day wearing prison uniforms out there picking cotton in fields. There are people out there on work crews who are literally chained to each other under armed guard for piddly crimes like being homeless in America. They didn't have the money to hire a real lawyer. They got a public pretender who didn't give a shit. And now look at us. We're looking at these laws and how they're being used to kick the poor man down. All these things that we wanted to put together, the South did most of this. They wanted to do good gesture things where they created institutions to help out black people that they're going to force that black person through so much. There's no possible way it's going to help. Oh yes, the Southern Baptist Church is going to help out the black people. It's gonna. But you got to show up 8 times a week or 8 times a month. You got to show up for the Wednesday services and you got to show up for the Sunday services. You got to take an active role in church and do what the church tells you. Even though the people running the church are the same racist bastards who were commanding a cavalry regiment just a few years prior. I'm preaching, but not about your God or mine. Odin loves you. My issue, he does. That's the story, isn't it? Jesus loves us too. That's the story, isn't it? That's my story and I'm sticking to it. But these folks wanted to use religion as an excuse to do horrible things to human beings. The reason that slavery was kept so long in the South, well past when they and the Northerners had agreed that slavery would be ended, they used the Bible as their excuse, because the Bible has instructions on how you're supposed to treat your slaves. The Southerners said, see, it's ordained by God that we're supposed to have slaves. We're supposed to own other humans. See, it says how we're supposed to treat them in the Bible. Then you read the Bible and you read the instructions for how they're supposed to treat their slaves. Well, they didn't treat their slaves that way, did they? The fact that it is 2022, I'm already in trouble with the government. The fact that it's 2022 and we still have homeless people strapped together, picking cotton in fields like it's 1860. Jesus, what the hell's going on here? An underarmed guard, no less. Of course, then we had the racial profiling and the shipping all of the brown people out in the 1950s. And then we had a resurgence with ICE. You guys remember those things? Those were in recent times. We're not talking about the 1850s or the 1860s. We are talking about recent events. These very same things that we want to condemn other nations for, and we are still doing them here to this day. You want to talk about the Japanese internment camps, and we see all these specials. Everybody tells us how bad we should feel for all of these Japanese immigrants. Most of them are dead. It's their offspring who are still here. The people that was done to, they're dead. The people who did it to them are also dead. They're all dead. None of the people who made the decisions to put those Japanese Americans into internment camps, none of them are alive. We're told that as white folks, of course, we're supposed to feel sorry for what those other horrible people did to Japanese folks. Meanwhile, out here on the streets, it don't matter what color you are. Being white doesn't afford you shit. Not a goddamn thing. Matter of fact, in many cases, it's going to have people look the other way because you're a white person. You're supposed to go to the back of the bus. White people are the ones who own slaves. Isn't that it? Using the Bible and the church and their God is an excuse. Using the law is an excuse. Oh, well, they're breaking the law. They're breaking the law by being homeless. They're breaking the law by not having property to live in. They're not allowed to have property because their granddaddy didn't have property. The Roman rental agreements from Imperial Rome are some of the harshest that have ever existed in the history of humanity, and America has that in full force and full swing. We literally copied the worst of the worst. We made it so that everything is dependent upon money, and the only people who can make it in this white society are our victims. Do you know why our victims are the only ones who are able to make it? Because when you've done that to black people and the black folks know that they don't have any rights or any chance, all they've got is their family. That creates a family bond that we don't have. When Hispanic people come here and they know they don't stand a fucking chance alone, they have to stick together as a family. That creates a family bond that we don't have. So here we are in a capitalist society where one false charge can destroy your entire life and make you a fucking meatball for prison for the rest of eternity. Not literally, because you won't survive eternity, will you? None of us will. I can't say that people are going to die, because if I do, I get treated like I'm threatening to kill people. No, we're all going to die. That is a fucking fact. Whether it be a heart attack or some nut job blowing your goddamn head off at Macintosh Dairy outside of Thornton, Colorado on December 29th of 2017. I gotta tell you folks, we got all these white folk out on the street, and they're told that they can't be victims because they're white. Meanwhile, the original laws, the laws that were set to make it easy to do these things to us, the reason that they start with the homeless and the disabled is because those are the ones who have never had rights, who have traditionally and historically been to blame for everything. You have made us out to be the worst, most horrible creatures on the planet, capable of atrocities that nobody in a house could ever be capable of. And that we must all be part of this great conspiracy against your society. The laws that you made, that you allowed to be passed, because at the time you thought they were only going to be used on black people. Well, that's not the way it was written, was it? Does the 13th Amendment expressly state anything about black people? No, it does not.
They don't give a fuck what color you are. It's all about privilege and wealth.
Exactly. Privilege and wealth. When you blame white people for something that John F. Kennedy did, or you blame black people for something that Malcolm X did, is it black people who did that, or is it Malcolm X? Is it white people, or is it John F. Kennedy? But then we have institutions. By institution, I mean groups that are supposed to be dedicated to other things, such as the Catholic Church, dedicated to this God who was used to keep slavery alive. And slavery is still, yes, very much alive in this country today. The largest chain gangs are in the most southern slave owning states. And the largest populations of black slaves are in those states.
Don't forget, down on the Texas border, they're using Mexican children for fucking work, slave work too.
Yeah, but we already know that. What was it? Not Diane Sawyer. The lady who took over her did a special on that just last year. And how it's Americans who are doing it. It's not well, it's on the Mexican side too, but they did a special on that. Yup.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, Mexico taking children from here and using this slave labor.
And that's true too. They're going through San Antonio and they're going through, it all goes through Denver, Colorado, and the money comes from Boulder. A lot of those people from the pedophile islands you talk about, a lot of these actors that Ricky Gervais went after, they have houses and holdings in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay. I wouldn't be surprised.
I've seen Jean-Luc Picard there. I've seen Alanis Morissette there. I've seen Chuck Liddell there. I've seen Tommy Chong there. I never talked to any of them, but I saw them.
Yeah.
I did say hello to Jennifer Garner. She was filming a movie called Catch and Release, and I didn't know it was Jennifer Garner. I just knew there was a pregnant lady, so I yelled at her, "Congratulations." That's probably a bad thing to say to a pregnant woman today, though. Well, with the abortion thing that everybody's up in arms about, that might be her dad's kid. She might be forced to give birth to her little brother. On the bright side, that's still better than giving birth to your little brother.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said that. I don't even know if you have a little brother. I just feel bad for him if he looks anything like you.
No, he don't look anything like me. He dead.
So he's better looking. Oh.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mom's drinking habit killed him before he was even like a year old. So she gave birth to him. He was had a fucked up lung or something, like the heart or something. So the condition.
Yep. A lot of people don't think about that either.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to how white society or white racism destroyed white society, we made a whole group of victims that nobody cares about, that don't have those rights, that are stripped of their rights to the Constitution, who are basically set aside as the victim class for everyone in America. You're pissed off at the government, take it out on a homeless person. You didn't get what you wanted, take it out on a homeless person. It's now illegal to take it out on black people, take it out on a homeless person. You're not allowed to beat your wife anymore, take it out on a homeless person. Your husband rapes you, but you want a roof over your head, well, go take it out on a homeless person.
That's just starting with the cops right there. I mean, that's just the cops. Now, come on, let's talk about it.
You're right. And see, that's the thing. There are 5 times as many hate crimes against the homeless than all other hate crimes combined in the United States. Matter. And that doesn't count or include police interactions. You're right. We don't matter. Black lives matter, unless they're homeless, though.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I mean, you don't see a shitload of black people that are screaming Black Lives Matter going out and getting the crackhead off the street because he's homeless.
Right.
You know.
Matter of fact, there were several occasions that right after a BLM rally, there were black folks who were victimizing other black folks who were homeless, throwing firecrackers like artillery shells at them while they were sleeping. There were black folks who were walking around and shooting homeless people in the head, and white people too. There still is. I mean, that thing in New York City, that guy got like 11 different people. Just shot them in their head while they were passed out.
Yeah. No, they at least arrested him, though. They looked into it. I mean,
And how difficult is it to do that? How hard is it?
When the cops are taking them up in the hills and fucking hunting them like sport, you know, so.
They didn't give 2 shits about Kelly Thomas.
They made a movie about it.
To death.
They made a movie about the cops taking the homeless people. Ice-T or Ice-T was in it.
Yep.
You know what the freaking pricks fucking do though? Sometimes they tell me go out in the woods and camp. Just don't camp on private property. I'm thinking I own private property. They get pissed if I fucking go camp on it too. It's like fuck you guys. What the fuck?
There's nowhere for
It
us. They
comes
want to
down
mark us into the
proving that
sea.
you own that land. If you
I
have the
mean-
deed and everything, you have all the paperwork, they can't say shit. But if you don't,
They still
They
do
still look
though.
they
at-
can't
say
just
this-
take your word for
They
it.
say this has got to be forged because they won't go fucking check isn't true. They're just fucking pricks.
Well, at that point, then you gotta
Don't
take
go
them-
out that way. They've told me later, don't go out that way farther than you are because that's all private property out there. I own a lot of it, but maybe not the majority of it.
It's probably one of their fucking pot grows.
Well, then there's the 14-day thing with all of the federal land and also
Do you know
state
who the
land.
people are that even live there?
Well, yeah. Of course you know who the people are that
All
live
my
there. You
friends live
wouldn't
on
be
my
there.
property and shit. They're cool with me. I go out anyway if I feel like it. I just don't like going back. It's a hike, you know what I mean? So it's like, why go back and back and back?
Oh, it's like the
Yeah.
people at Starbucks and the people over
I
at
have
the
houses up there,
motel.
they won't fuck off and let me in.
They told me it was all right if I plugged in there, and well, the cops weren't okay with that. They came over and lied to me and told me the people over there didn't want me there and something about trespass. And thank goodness one of those cops spoke up and said, "No, that's not the case. You're lying to that dude straight up." I was like, "Fuck yeah!" At least one cop in Hood River spoke up and said, "Dude, knock it off."
Yeah.
But that was just one cop, and that same cop came back later.
They
to-
probably mistaked you for me.
Actually, they mistook me for that dude with the rocks. They might have mistook me for you. Those guys that one day that wanted to get frisky with you because they thought you were me with that sign.
No, no one wanted to get frisky with me. My friend just told me she saw someone holding the sign where I hold my sign, and it kind of looked like me.
Yeah,
But
who was it
They
that
didn't see the dogs.
who that? All right, that's right. That was you. It was the other guy that was up there on the corner, and he was only up there like 3 days. You know, the one that sat underneath the tree behind you while he was there for like a day and a half while you were there. He just sat in that tree probably about 20 yards behind you.
I don't know. I don't pay attention. I'm just looking at people to see if they're going to give me a 5 or not.
Right?
Come on, you got 5.
Well, them
on it.
youngins with that whole bullshit, like that ain't called for. You know, that's another one of those systemic things. It started off with systemic racism. It
Look,
started off with laws they wanted to
I
make
feel
to
bad
keep
for his
black people
classmates
down, but
because
now
he's the
it's
type of
used
kid
on
that's
us.
going to get them shot by somebody else. You know what I mean? I feel bad for his classmates because he's
Right.
going to bully somebody. They going to come in and shoot his ass and everyone else. And the only one that needed to be shot was his dumb ass.
Right?
You know what I mean?
But you didn't shoot him. You didn't punch him in the face. I saw you. You could have punched him in his face.
I could have punched him.
And instead, you inflicted self-harm.
I didn't even inflict that self-harm. It's good to punch shit every once in a while. It makes your hands stronger. It does. I haven't broken a knuckle in years. It's all callous. It's all fucking. I haven't broke anyone's face in years either, so I mean, it's a plus side.
Well, another thing, like with the systemic racism, you're aware of it, but you didn't grow up with it. When you learned it, it wasn't a racist thing. It was a very specific group of people who were doing the wrong stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't go taking it out on the families that were already there.
Well,
You
I
were
don't-
angry at the
I-
people who brought that to your town.
Yeah, I don't run around, hating black people because they're black. I don't go around hating anyone because of the color of their skin. You do stupid shit around me, I'm probably not going to want you around me. Why? Because stupid shit brings cops and trouble. And
That's
two things
right.
I try to avoid are cops and trouble. And bitches with fat asses.
Now, why don't you guys call the cops when you guys are victimized like that?
They the ones victimizing us. The fuck?
I called them for a fucking burger at a fucking someone else's place. I also called them because I heard gunshots that same night. So I woke up. So I called them. Fucking dispatchers trying to do something, talking to me for a long time. Stay on the phone.
We could be
fucking-
doing everything right. We'll
they're
be
fucking-
mistaken for the trouble when they get there.
I hear a
So,
bomb go off, so I go look, tell them what's up, blah, 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 what happens. If I can go somewhere, I go to leave because it seems fine. They're burglarizing something else that was mine at the time. I sold it now, but it was mine at the time. So then they fucking book it back around, see cops, so I go talk to them, they fucking arrest me. I'm like, motherfuckers are robbing down there. Don't you see?
I'm the one that called you in. Why are you arresting
Hold on
me?
for a fucking hour while they're still harassing.
they kept on harassing me.
They don't even
I'm trying
realize
to
it.
get their body
My
cameras
phone is
because they
on.
treated me like
To the
shit.
dispatch, well, they're fucking have me in the back of a car, fucking phones
Since the shit
like in their pocket or
stench
whatever.
came back, lady gave me a joint while I was panhandling.
Then they
Oh, I
never give
can't
the phone
smoke that
back.
much.
They never even gave the phone back or the fucking other stuff
Pussy.
until I went and got some.
How difficult is it to get your ID back out here?
I gotta get my birth certificate from Pennsylvania, and I gotta get at least I think my social. I mean, I've never been in the register, so they need my birth certificate, which is the big one.
Well, they have to have both of those, so you're gonna have to travel for at least one of those, and the other one you're gonna need a local address for, and you still need 2 forms of ID to get
Which
either
one
one
would
of
I
them.
have to travel for? I could just go back to actually California because I'm on the registry and I could get an ID there. But
Well, see, that's one of the 2 forms of IDs you might be able to utilize. Like for me, I had to, when I was 23, that's when I finally got an ID. And I had to have a lady who had known me for like 10 years sign that she knew who I was and could verify I was who I was. She'd actually only known me like 7 years at that point, but she could sign that paper. I'm good. I got to try to catch the next bus up to AutoZone and get the parts that I need to fix my car. Well, I didn't break it off. The guy who was helping me broke it off, but we knew that was a possibility and we'd actually discussed it beforehand. So it's not like it was anything we weren't aware of. I understood conceptually a lot of stuff, but he has hands-on knowledge of the stuff, so a lot of the wives' tales I'd been told he was able to clear up. I just wish Fernando would come back. That kid knew his shit. Everybody, when they tell me, hey, if you need your car fixed, they're telling me about 3 different Hispanic families in the area. I'm like, aren't you guys the same assholes who are talking shit about Mexicans, and now you're telling me to go to people who you were calling Mexicans for help? Man, this is a fucked up town.
yeah, I've sat there at the McDonald's with those Mexican people, and they're swamps, so they don't really come running over to us. They get to us when they can, right? But these people are like, I wonder if it's Cinco de Mayo today. All of them ain't doing shit. Just sitting there waiting for their food. I'm thinking, y'all, that's not gonna work. 1, number 2, that's racist as fuck.
Right?
But you're still gonna eat something touched by their fucking brown hands. Sorry, people.
Yeah, you're going to talk trash on them, and then you're going to still eat the food.
And they're not even go home and cook something, you dumb motherfucking slow ass fucking retarded fucking who never taught you to fucking bake, fucking make dessert, do any fucking thing other than scratch your balls and fucking yell at people for not getting your food to you fast enough. Sorry, you
Now-
fucking dipshitted motherfucker.
The stuff that we're going over, this is all repercussions of systemic racism that wasn't written in racist. It doesn't say specifically towards black people or specifically towards former slaves. It was any loophole that they could get in order to keep those people down. They also topped the systemic racism because the South was its own country, and all the South are supposed to be united. They're going to have their own country. And then after the Civil War, all these people that didn't even own slaves want to take part in systemic racism that was never something for them to begin with.
I have one time.
When it comes to saving lives out here, it comes down to filthy motherfuckers like that asshole because he's got a beard. I'm not going to call him nice things. We know he's just a beardo.
I'm a weirdo. No, I'm Sasquatch.
Well, I'm a Wookiee who got scalped.
I don't even exist. I'm a figment of this motherfucker's imagination. If you look at him, I'm like a fucking mirror, only prettier.
That's right. Talking shit out here is terms of endearment. Fuck off and fuck you can equally mean I have the utmost respect for you. Namaste. I see the human in you. Fuck you.
I'm the prettier, younger version.
He's older than me, but not by much.
That's true.
Also, of course, I tell him he's ugly as sin, and of course he tells me he's the better looking of the 2 of us. What am I, the Frog Prince? No. If you kiss me, I still won't turn into Prince.
He holds signs.
And they call it
That say Americans
purple
are
rain.
cowards. I sing songs that Americans are cowards. We're not the same.
So anyway, we got a bunch of white people who are now stuck with the Roman rental agreement. They're stuck with anti-homeless laws, and they're stuck with a capitalist society that only assists those who work together as a family. That would be the victims of systemic racism, because systemic racism has taught them that the only way that they ever stand a chance is by working together as a family, working together as a cohesive unit. If a family member gets pregnant, sure, it wasn't planned, but they're going to work together as a family to raise that child. In American families, it's more of, oh, I have a child. The government owes me. I need this and I need that. And after I get what I want and my child turns 18, child, you're an adult. Get out of my house. You no longer exist. The best you're going to get out of me is advice. I'm never going to listen to what you have to say. I'm never going to care. If you get in trouble, you are on your own. Now, not all of white society is like this, but very much so. They are. Even if they're not that way within their own family, they are that way towards the rest of the village, towards the rest of the community, towards those who are not part of their family or part of their immediate family. And we see these Hispanic folks. They're helping out complete and total strangers. They're putting incredible investments of time and energy and love and humanity. And not just them, but they're getting their families involved in assisting strangers, in helping strangers, in getting things done, the same as the homeless do. The homeless are fighting hard for Hispanic folks, because we all have friends out here who are of Hispanic origin. We're fighting hard for black folks because we have loved ones out here who just happen to be black. We're fighting hard for women because we have a lot of women out here who are being victimized. And you know what? We're trying to get the predators off the streets too, but that's not who the cops are going after. The cops are using pedophiles to harass the homeless and to victimize the homeless, and this is nationwide. This tactic is well known by every law enforcement officer in America. You get yourself a child molester, you find one who, well, he's going down. There's nothing he can do about it, and that officer already knows it. Or he's on probation and just got released. Well, you know that, well, he victimized children. He's one of the biggest bitches on the planet, and he will fold and roll over and lie and cheat and steal whatever he's got to do to try to save his own bacon. And at the end of the day, he never saved his own bacon. All he did was destroy a bunch of innocent lives because he's a fucking coward, just like that cop. When you have informants who are child molesters, you need to take that with a grain of salt. Those child molesters affect all of us out here. They affect black people. They affect Hispanics. They affect women and men. They affect the homeless, to be sure, the most. So I'm going to end this video. Apparently there was some comments. Amen, 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 and preach. I think I heard a man during this conversation telling me to preach too. White racism made it so that white people, the problem, white people being the problem to begin with, ended up helping out all of the people that they were trying to keep down and only hurting themselves, their own families, their own cultures. Well, now we get to see all these white people out on the streets being repeatedly victimized and rolled over again and again and again and again and again. You, right? You allowed it to happen. You wanted to tell yourselves that these people deserved it. This is how it was back then too. These former slaves deserved this for what they had done. It was the former slaves' fault that all of these northerners said, no, we're not going to tolerate this racism anymore. We are not going to allow the ownership of other human beings. It will not be allowed. They stated that loud and clearly with a vote. Even the South voted to end slavery. Did you know that? Over half of the southern states, over half of them voted to end slavery. That's right. So we're seeing the repercussions today, the repercussions of the we don't care. Oh, you broke the law, you broke the law. We're going to be cold-hearted, you broke the law. Well, you know what? being as slave labor is legal in a situation where you are convicted of a crime, it is to our captors' benefits to make it illegal to exist homeless on the streets, and to make fines and consequences so expensive that one cannot possibly even defend themselves in court or on the streets. To paint a picture of all of us as evil, terrible monsters and project those things upon us. And when we made it legal for women to vote, and we started giving women important rights and important roles within our society, we still shunned the homeless. When we started allowing black people to take important roles in our society, we still left out the homeless folks. The disabled, I gotta tell you, we are so horrible to them and to the homeless, and most of the homeless are disabled. And what's your excuse? Oh, you just need to get a job. All these horrible things that you have been projecting onto black people for years, and projecting onto Mexicans for years, projecting onto immigrants for years. These are your fears that you are projecting in the form of hatred. And that hatred has destroyed you and made them stronger. Congratulations, dumbass. Here's the thing about equality and we the people. We the people means we. It's our rights. An affront to my rights is an affront to every American's rights. An affront to his rights are an affront to every American's rights, even if it's the government doing it. The 13th Amendment did not end slavery. It took slavery out of the hands of southern plantation owners and put it solely in the property of the United States government nationwide, including states that are not southern. When it comes to the concentration camps and forced labor camps, homeless are still forced into those to this day, and they don't get the sympathy of the Japanese in World War II. They don't get the sympathy of the chain gangs in the 1800s, which are still in use today. Still in use in 2022. In 2022, well over 140 years, almost 160, isn't it? Since the end of the Civil War. And there are still black slaves picking cotton in southern cotton fields. Anyway, it's good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.